There was a knock at the door and Grace, the wife of the CEO, came in.
I've made you some coffee, so feel free to serve yourself.
I couldn't hold myself back when I heard those words. Grace looked surprised, but she didn't pursue the matter, just kept quiet and waited for me.
My name is Julian Hill. I'm 28 years old and I live to work. But that didn't mean that I was competitive and that everyone relied on me.
It was not that great. Of course, it would be great if it were like that. But I knew that I was not that capable. I was doing my best, but in terms of sharpness, empathy, intelligence, and know-how, unfortunately, I was standing at best. So when I said I worked harder than everyone else and did everything honestly, regardless of how hectic my schedule was. That was all I could do.
How can you work so hard and not get sick?
My friends and colleagues who observed my life often said that. In the morning, I would arrive at work 2 hours earlier than usual and complete as much work as possible. And in the afternoon, I tried to stay focused and not talk too much so that I could start a new task. If my supervisor handed me a job, I accepted it regardless of the time, and I usually got home at 10 p.m. In the worst case, I'd take the last train. Even on my days off, I thought only about work. I did what I could do at home. People around me were concerned that I didn't have a life outside of work. However, I never thought of this life to be painful. It was something I greatly wanted and finally got. Growing up, I was very sick, so I could hardly play outside. Between the summer of my 3rd year of elementary school and the spring of my 2nd year of junior high, I was either in the hospital or at home. I envied my buddies who were playing outside and participating in extracurricular activities. It wasn't like I wanted to be sick. I don't remember doing anything bad enough to be punished by God, but there were many times when I resented my life, wondering why I was the only one. The friends who cared for me in the beginning gradually stopped asking about me. By the time I ended junior high school, I had almost no friends left. Of course, it's logical that when you progress from elementary to junior high school, your environment and thoughts change. And you get busier. However, my longtime friends were ahead of me. I couldn't help but feel as if I was the only one being left behind. But there was one person who stood by my side and waited for me. Isaac, my childhood friend since kindergarten. Person who stood by my side and waited for me. Isaac, my childhood friend since kindergarten. Isaac was, to put it bluntly, a bit of a dullard. I guess I inherited my parents' character, but I was rather impatient. I was always waiting for him to put on his shoes or when he went running because he was a slow runner. But then he began to be the one who was waiting for me. Because Isaac has always had a good-natured and gentle personality, I was not surprised that he didn't forget about me, even though all my classmates around me stopped coming. So, I couldn't thank him properly or consider treating him nicely. But he was the only support for me. I was greatly looking forward to going to the same school as him in the fall of my 8th grade year after I had nearly totally recovered from my illness. But for some reason, I couldn't be honest with him the day before the first day of school. I'm so excited that we are going to the same school. Unfortunately, I uttered something that was not even in my thoughts. Why are you saying that? You're so weird. Just because we've known each other since childhood doesn't mean we're going to be together forever. Hearing those words, Isaac smiled at me, but he also seemed a little sad. In fact, at that moment, I wish I could have said, "I'm just kidding, I'm happy too." But I was too shy to say it. I was too embarrassed to say it. I didn't know that I would regret it more than I could ever regret that stupid stubbornness. That night, the next day was my first day of school in 5 years. My first day at junior high school. With just a little bit of anxiety and a lot of excitement, I put on my brand new school uniform and prepared my shoes. My parents were happy to see me and they were in tears. I was a little embarrassed, but even in those moments I couldn't help but be happy and joyful. From tomorrow I can be a normal junior high school student like everyone else. That's what I thought. But just when we were feeling good, our family received a phone call notifying us of the worst news possible. Mom dropped the receiver and had a look on her face that I had never seen before. What's wrong? When I asked my mom, I couldn't believe what she said. Isaac, he died in a car accident. I couldn't believe it. Isaac and I had been together in this house until just a few hours ago. We were finally going to be able to go to school together the next day. Isaac had been patiently waiting for the big day with me all along. Why did he have to disappear now? It was difficult to believe, but time passed regardless of our feelings. The next day, I went to school for the first time in junior high, absent-mindedly. The next day, I went to school for the first time in junior high, absent-mindedly. I had friends from elementary school, so I had no trouble making friends. But I could smile with all my heart because Isaac was already gone. The next day, I attended Isaac's funeral, but many kids from the school weren't present. I asked the reason. I heard that Isaac didn't have many friends at school because he used to come to visit me after school without a second thought. I couldn't believe he had put his time on hold just to pay me a visit to the hospital. It was very typical of Isaac, but what the hell was he thinking? I couldn't thank my wonderful and sweet friend who cared about me more than his school life till the very last moment. Instead, I hurt him by saying that he was weird. I was a horrible friend. I didn't know if I had the right to call myself his friend. I was so frustrated and sad that I couldn't stop crying during the funeral. I never imagined that this day would come. I thought I could thank and apologize to him as much as I want from now on. After the funeral, Isaac's parents approached me. I couldn't look them in the eye because I was so ashamed of myself. Isaac's mother handed me a big paper bag.
Take this. I think Isaac bought it for you, Julian. I don't know what it is, but I'd like you to take it.
I didn't know what it was, but there was no way I could refuse it. I accepted the paper bag, and when I saw what was inside, I couldn't stop crying again. There was a bright yellow bouquet. On the side of the arrangement was a handwritten card that read, "I'm so glad you're out of the hospital. Your best friend, Isaac." Isaac's accident happened near a flower shop in front of the station. The bouquet was unharmed, but the bag was slightly damaged, so I knew what had happened right away. Isaac had gone to buy flowers for me and got in an accident. I couldn't imagine it. Just how far had he sacrificed himself for me?
I have never heard of a guy giving flowers to another guy. Even at this point in my life, I couldn't express my gratitude honestly. All I could do was hold that bouquet and shed tears.
Isaac would still be alive if I, a thankful person, had not been in his body. Isaac's parents should have felt that way, but they didn't blame me.
Thank you so much for being Isaac's friend. They just smiled and said so.
I couldn't have done a single thing to deserve those words. I didn't do anything. I'm so immature. I couldn't do anything for him. I'm so sorry. All I could do was apologize, and I knew my words would never reach Isaac anymore. All I could do was apologize, and I knew my words wouldn't reach Isaac anymore. I didn't easily accept that Isaac was gone. I never forgot him, but day by day I started to move on with my life. I decided what I wanted to do when I grew up. I just want to go to school. I just want to live a normal life. Until then, I had those normal desires, but for the first time in my life, I found something I wanted to do for someone else. That was what drove me to this day, at 28 years old. So no matter how busy I was, I never wanted to run away from my life. But something had been bothering me so much lately that I felt like I was losing my mind. It was the newly transferred manager from the head office, Wyatt. I had heard rumors that he was a strict guy, but to be honest, it was more than I imagined. I didn't mind how harshly he spoke and treated me, but the way he assigned tasks and the way he treated them was unparalleled. Moreover, he was not impressed with my willingness to do the best I could do. He had his eyes on me, so I was cornered.
I hate people who think I'm working long hours. I'm doing my best. They're just trying to justify their inefficiency. The real good ones get the job done in the least amount of time.
He said this to me, who arrived at work before the start of the day and worked extra, and the company stopped paying me for it. However, Wyatt assigned me a task that I could not complete during my working hours. Of course, I admit that I was not very good at what I did, but I was sure that I was overloaded with work, no matter how anyone looked at it.
Julian, are you sure you're okay? It's rumored that at the head office, people who caught the eye of Wyatt quit one after another. Maybe you should talk to your superiors.
My colleagues and close seniors talked to me like that, but I was not going to let myself be discouraged by him. I had to do what I had to do now to be useful to this company. I didn't care about myself. I wanted to help this company more than anything else. So thanks, I'll be fine. I kept saying that. Then one day, Matthew, the company's CEO, would frequently visit our office, which was not far from the corporate headquarters. Finally, I was summoned by Matthew. Despite the overwhelming workload, I was doing my best. But I worried that my performance had deteriorated, or I suspected that my relationship with Wyatt had been considered unacceptable, and I would be transferred to another branch office. Matthew summoned me for the first time, so I was worried as I entered the allocated conference room.
Julian, are you sure you're okay? Julian, there has been an internal complaint that General Manager Wyatt has been harassing you. Is this true? This may be hard to say, but I'd like to hear the truth.
Matthew was famous for his good personality. He was also very concerned about the relationships between employees. To be honest, that made me happy. If I told the truth here, I would be able to break free from the daily grind of being overworked and abused. But I wondered if I should take the easy way out. What was the right thing to do for the company? I thought about it, but could not come up with an answer and found it difficult to open my mouth. Then Matthew, perhaps sensing my feelings, said to me, "Take your time. I'll wait as long as you want." He told me that. I almost cried because those words reminded me of Isaac. A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door, and Grace, the wife of Matthew, came in. She was also the vice CEO of the company. She and her husband were both charismatic and well-liked within the company. In a positive aspect, because they always had a kind and loving heart, which is not typical of a CEO or vice CEO. I'd known that for a long time. Seeing the lingering stillness between me and Matthew, possibly understanding the situation, Grace responded in a calm tone.
I've made you some coffee, so feel free to serve yourself.
Her kindness brought tears to my eyes again. I couldn't hold it any longer. I would have never thought I would start crying. Matthew and Grace both looked surprised, but they didn't pursue the matter. They just kept quiet and waited for me. The more I tried to stop crying, the more I couldn't stop crying. All I could do was clutch the cup I had been given and say, "I'm a grown man, and it's so embarrassing that I'm crying in a place like this. I'm sorry. I am so immature and useless. I'm truly sorry," I said in a strained voice, and Grace said to me, "Excuse me. I don't mean to be rude, but what is your last name?" I didn't know why she asked me that.
Julian. Julian Hill.
When I answered, Grace looked surprised. And then
Are you by any chance Julian Wright? Were you Isaac's friend?
I was completely blanked out when she said that. Because she was right. Julian Wright was my name until I was a senior in high school. My parents divorced around that time, and I became Hill, using the last name of my mom. And just as she said, I knew, of course, that Matthew and Grace were the parents of Isaac. Isaac was there for me, but I couldn't do anything for him. So I wanted to help Isaac's parents as much as possible. I started working for Isaac's parents' company in the spring of my second year of high school. I had lived my life with the goal of being useful to them, but I'd been hiding my true identity for a long time because I couldn't help Isaac and was responsible for the accident. I wasn't expecting to be discovered at a place like that, so I couldn't think of anything to say straight away. However, I knew I couldn't hide it any longer.
Yes, it's been a long time.
I wiped my tears, stood up, and shook their hands.
Oh, so you are the boy from back then. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you.
Matthew said so and hugged me. Grace began to spill tears, and then
I knew it. I had a suspicion, because the way you strive to accept responsibility for yourself was similar to what you said back then. I've been waiting to meet you for a long time. I was so sad when Isaac disappeared that I couldn't think about anything else. I couldn't express my gratitude to you, who was Isaac's best friend.
I was surprised to hear what she said.
No, I'm the one who has to thank Isaac. Isaac was the bigger support for me in the hospital, putting himself second to me. But I couldn't be honest with him. I may have made Isaac feel bad. I was so ashamed of myself that I couldn't go see you two. I'm really sorry that I didn't go to the burial. The reason I'm here at this company right now is to assist you both, even if only from behind the scenes. I know this isn't enough to make up for what I couldn't do to Isaac, but I felt that this was the only thing I could do.
When I told them about my apology, which I had kept buried for many years, they were startled. And now Matthew opened his mouth.
On the contrary, my son Isaac had received so much from you, Julian. Since Isaac was a little boy, he was weak and not good at sports, so many children were mean to him. But according to him, you were always waiting for him with a smile. So when he heard that you got sick, Isaac was so sad. He said it was his turn to support you. Isaac decided to do something for the first time in his life, despite the fact that he had never been able to make a decision before. We realized that you were a great friend of him. We couldn't thank you enough. That's how we felt.
I had no idea that Isaac felt that way. I didn't care if he thought I was a cold, unappreciative friend. Isaac and I didn't voice our feelings, for perhaps we were both preparing to open our hearts when the tragedy occurred. The truth I learned after 15 years, I felt nervous, frustrated, happy. I had mixed feelings. Then Grace said, "Thank you so much for still caring about Isaac. I'm sure Isaac would be happy if he could know what's going on right now."
And even if he can't, I think Isaac would have understood. When he left the house to go buy flowers, he predicted that you would say you didn't need them since you were too shy to accept them. But he knew you would take special care of them to ensure that they would not wither. Isaac said that he knew you very well. He was smiling when he said that.
Hearing those words, the tears that had stopped welling up began to flow again. I knew Isaac was better than me in every way. He even knew how I felt when I couldn't be honest with him. I not only treasured the flowers he gave me that day, but I also dried them so they could remain forever. I'm not into flowers, but I still have them in my room. Isaac was only 15 years old at the time, and yet he was right. As I was crying again, Grace said one more thing to me.
But now please live your life for yourself. I'm sure Isaac would want that too. I think he would want you to live your life, Julia.
With those words, I felt as if all my tension was lifted. No matter what they said, I still wanted to repay my debt to Isaac and his parents. But I started to consider valuing my feelings. That's how I felt. I could also make Isaac happy by taking good care of my life, which he had supported. I also told them everything I knew about the power harassment done to me and other employees by Wyatt. As a result, Wyatt was transferred back to the head office. To re-educate him, he was downgraded to a regular employee. I was able to work with a reasonable and rewarding work schedule. Strangely enough, I was able to work better and get better results. Without knowing it, I started to be useful to the company. I really feel like I've been indebted to Isaac and his parents for a long time. From now on, I will try my best to repay their favor while living life to the fullest without overworking myself.